Ava, can you please share a little bit about yourself, your tech background, and what do you do now?
It's been a 25-year journey getting here. I started out tinkering with encryption software and graphic interfaces back in the 90s for a little gaming startup, and then navigated sort of following the trends and following what seemed like a cool project to work on. Did some work with MySQL for a while. That led me to get to know a bunch of the folks who founded OpenStack, and I worked on OpenStack for a while, and cloud was all the rage, and so were containers. So I did some work with the Kubernetes community and a bunch of other projects along the way, and landed at CISA. It's the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency in the US.
For those who don't know anything about CISA, can you share a little bit what that organization does and what your role within the organization is?
Briefly, I think the name's pretty descriptive. I'm not a good spokesperson for the whole agency, but my little lane is trying to help secure the usage of open source software, right? How CISA is using open source, setting good guidance and practices for other parts of the federal government for how they use open source on the civilian side, and finding ways to encourage the government to support open source software communities, showing up as a partner, as a participant, not trying to tell folks what to do, but to support. And a lot of what I do day to day is just educating folks that open source is a community-driven effort that includes such a wide breadth of people and reasons for participating from all over the world. Yeah, I used to write code for a living. These days, I mostly just talk to people and teach people about open source.
Do you find that part of your role also is to act as a liaison out to open source communities to kind of explain what CISA is and what they're trying to do as well?
Very much a liaison, but less a little bit of going to open source communities and explaining what CISA is doing. Some of that I do. A little while ago, I was on a panel presentation hosted by Open Forum Europe, all talking about how governments and open source foundations are working together to help secure open source. So it's a little bit of that outreach, talking to the community, but a lot of it's also internal liaison, bringing open source expertise. I don't know everything, but I know a lot of people after 25 years. And so bringing them in to talk to and educate the government on why all this is so important and so critical. And what was that Harvard study? $8 trillion of economic value. Like, this is such critical work we've all done and built over the past 25 years.
I'm curious how your journey was to get to your current job. Like, was it something that you were working towards, or is you working for CISA something that happened by chance?
Really quite by chance. And I think the most surprised person is me, that I'm here. I mean, 6 years ago, I thought I would probably never work in the tech industry again for personal reasons. I was having a lot of trouble finding another job after I came out, and got a job, worked there for several years, in the intersection of open source and security, hardware and software security. And that led me to, through community connections and talks I give at conferences, giving a talk at ShmooCon, which is a big cybersecurity conference in Washington, D.C. every January. And while I was gearing up for that, they actually slotted me in the opening talk. They don't call it a keynote, but it was the main stage, main track, first talk of the day. Pretty awesome spot to be in to talk about open source and the security and insecurity of open source, and why everyone in the security community, who mostly hadn't really paid too much attention, this was just after Log4j, why they really needed to understand open source. Well, because it's in DC and it's a bunch of hackers, there's a side event called Hackers on the Hill that some folks who used to work in government put together every year. And they invited me to go to that. So small meeting in the White House. Probably, I'm guessing 50, 100 people. Hackers on the Hill is a public thing. You can look it up. But from that meeting, I got invited to a couple smaller conversations, and just had really pleasant opportunities to give some feedback on some things, and an informal job offer that night. And then spent 6 months being really like, oh gosh, oh no, why me? No, can't do this. Didn't ever think I would work in the government, and spent a while talking to different parts of from the White House, other branches, like, where can I actually make an impact and help this administration be smarter about how it's interacting with open source and not make mistakes. A lot of what I saw my role as before coming in was to prevent accidental harm to open source communities by politicians or cybersecurity and government groups who are trying to protect our technology stack and don't know about open source. We've all seen sort of the direction change that European regulators went through in 2023, and I wanted to have a similar kind of impact in the US, making sure that we're on the right track to protect open source communities, really by accident, because I was giving this talk in DC and someone heard my name.
I mean, we talk about it a lot, how like if you're active in open source, then all that you do within the communities, that's public, and like you can make a name for yourself, and people recognize you, and companies recognize you, or the government recognizes you because of the work that you're doing, and how much easier it can get to build a career path or fall into one through that exposure that you have in these public environments. Like my job at the Open Infra Foundation happened in a very similar way in terms of being involved in the community, giving talks here and there, and then a few of the foundation staff were coming to one of the OpenStack Days events in Hungary. So I met more of them, and then we had a chat, and then I had the well, maybe not informal job offer yet, but the you should talk to a few more people, but we kind of don't see it not happening kind of job offer. So
That's kind of
it's
an
been
informal
interesting.
job offer. Like, hey, we
Yeah.
like you. Let's have some more conversations. But also, when can you start?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny how we share that
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.